Welcome to Mainland, your local regional television station. I'm Tanya Omar, and some of the stories coming up in today's news: housing issues and who pays the cost, Brekkie brings in expert assessment of budget, latest quotable value figures for region, and more. A man was assaulted by a large group in Nelson early hours Sunday morning and was left suffering serious facial injuries. Detective Sergeant Alex Brunning of Nelson Police said the attack happened at approximately 3 a.m. Sunday the 29th of May when the man was walking home alone through the Nelson CBD. He was confronted at the corner of Bridge and Rutherford Streets by a group of around 6 to 10 people made up of both males and females who were walking from the opposite direction. He was then set upon by the group in a prolonged assault where he was knocked unconscious. During the assault, he received a fractured upper left cheekbone and has been flown to Wellington Hospital for corrective surgery. Police are seeking any witnesses to the assault or ask people with information regarding this incident to contact them on 03 5463 840 or Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. We asked a couple of people in Nelson if they thought the city was a safe place to walk at night. So what do you think about safety when walking around Nelson at night?
I think it's great. We've got a Japanese student, and he walks home, often it's dark, and he'd be walking home sometimes late at night, and it's safe. In fact, we asked him why he's come to Nelson or to New Zealand to go to the NMIT, and his answer was because it's safe. New Zealand's viewed as a safe place. But having said that, I think the only place where it could be a little bit dangerous is around the nightclubs, sometimes in the car park. That can be a little bit dodgy to be there at odd hours.
I'm fine. I even come from the School of Music when it's open again, down to the other side of the river. And if I meet groups of young people on my way, which you often do, say 11 o'clock at night, it's fine. Say hello to them. I've never had any trouble.
Big Brekkie is a nationwide event which was also hosted in Nelson on Wednesday morning this week by Child Poverty Action Group, CPAC, who each year bring together a team of experts to take an in-depth look at the government's budget. They analyse spending in the crucial areas of health, education, social security and family incomes, as well as the big picture distributional issues. This year's Brekkie was sponsored by Soroptimus International Nelson. Increasing pressures on local families and children have signalled a growing need to address the social conditions in New Zealand and the importance of solutions for immediate improvement. The focus of the event was to understand the budget and its implications for children and strengthening regional advocacy efforts. The event featured key speakers, which included CPAG's spokespeople Associate Professor Susan St. John and Professor Ines Asher, and will include a commentary from award-winning documentary maker and investigative journalist and author Brian Bruce. Mainland sent Ethan Williams to the event to ask some questions.
We're here because too many New Zealanders think, why should I look after other people's children? They're not my problem. These are often the people who resent paying taxes, particularly paying taxes to look after children whose parents are on the benefit. They think that tax is theft. They don't think it's the way that we have civilization. These are the people who don't buy into the fairness argument, that we're all better off, even the rich, if we live in a fair society. If you're rich and you live in a fair society, you'll live longer. Your children will probably not have less chance of being on drugs or get pregnant or whatever, teenage pregnancies. All of those things will be better even for rich people in a fair society. And these are people who also don't buy into the moral goodness argument that you should just do it because it's a good thing. So when I'm talking to people who, those kind of me-centered people, and I try to convince them why we should look after other people's children, I appeal to their selfishness. You know, the reason that we look after our children and we look after other people's children is that they will look after us when we get sick and old. Oh, well, that's a good reason. And the other thing I say to me-centered New Zealanders who want to, who are also the kind of people who want to blame parents, bad parenting, who want to say that there are, you know, we've only got this problem because parents make poor life choices, which tends to lead to poor circumstances for their children. And that if these bad parents didn't drink or smoke or gamble, they'd have money for their kids. What I say to them is, no, you've got the wrong end of the stick here. It's the children's fault that they're poor. Because they weren't smart enough to pick rich parents with no addictions when they were born. And they look at me as if I'm crazy and they say, but hey, you know, kids can't choose their parents. And I say, exactly. And by that I don't mean to infer, I meant from what I just said, that parents who are struggling financially are bad parents. I don't mean that at all, that's rubbish. What's bad are government budgets that continue to benefit the few of us at the expense of the many.
When we look at this budget, it's a band-aid budget. And many commentators have chewed this over already. We're a week on from the budget. And I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the economy and about incomes. But of course there's been endless analysis out there, so we're not going to labour that this morning. I come from Auckland. I am sick of living in a city that has changed so drastically. When I walk down Queen Street in Auckland, I fall over the homeless, people living under the benches, people begging. A really changed city. Here are some images from Auckland. Slum houses selling for $1 million. The homeless lying on the side of the street. And then the top, what's happening in South Auckland, where people are living in cars, where people just do not have any hope for the future, where 700 families can attend an event put on by the Auckland Action Against Child Poverty to try to help those families find out what they're actually entitled to. And those families were queuing from 6 o'clock in the morning at the event that was held. This is not the kind of country that I want to live in. Now, I'm an economist, and I do have to talk a little bit about the economics. Economists, unfortunately, for too long have been silent about distributional aspects of the budget. We tend to want to talk in generalities, look at averages, what's happening overall to averages, and use seriously flawed measures like GDP to give indications of success. Now this graphic just shows, that bottom line shows, our current recovery from the recession that started 2008, global financial crisis. And our recovery compared to other post-war recessions shown in that grey line, dotted line, and the grey area there giving the range, is what's happened in the recovery from other recessions. This is a slow recovery, and it's not one to be as excited about as the government would like us to be.
There's not a lot in this budget for poor people. They're not going to get better housing.
and the amount of housing that we need, they're going to see a gradual drop off in the kind of benefits that help poor families. And for working for families, they've done no effort at all here to make sure that children who are in homes where parents, for whatever reason, are not in work, are not being discriminated against. You get less money from the government if you're really poor.
Why do you think that is?
Shall I give you the history of neoliberalism? Which is the idea that if the rich are pandered to, then we'll all be better off. It isn't working. What we've got is an enormous gap between the rich and the poor in our country now, and it's time that we revisited this whole economic nonsense that we've been living through for the last 30 years.
And how has this budget compared to previous budgets in regards to child poverty?
Well, it's done absolutely nothing for child poverty, and we're just seeing a continuous decline in the spending on transfers. Of course, the government in the last year's budget did increase benefits, and it did increase partnering for families, and it's resting on its laurels now, assuming that that's going to be enough. So there's no indication we're going to see any attention to family incomes in the future budgets.
If I can just add that when John Key, in his first week in Parliament of this current term, said he was going to make child poverty a focus for this term's government, I find it extraordinary that the words either child poverty or poverty do not occur in the budget or any speech given by the Minister of Finance.
The previous budget, 2015, saw the government respond to child poverty as an issue of serious concern, leading to the first real increase in beneficiary income since 1972, which equated to an increase in benefits in April this year. This year, it doesn't look to be the case. We randomly asked a couple of people in Nelson if they thought the government is out of touch with the region's poorest. What do you think of the cost of buying a house in the Nelson-Tasman region?
When I came here, it was dearer than Auckland. Yeah.
When was that?
Almost 20 years ago. It was dearer than Auckland. Houses have just become unaffordable for a large percentage of the population. I think we do need more what used to be called state housing, real state housing, not farmed out to small groups who are taking their cut from the actual money that should be spent on houses.
And what about the costs involved in renting a house for people?
I honestly don't know. I haven't thought of that for quite a long time. It's the job situation, isn't it? It all comes down to the job situation, which is unfortunately the same the whole world over.
Well, the housing, my wife and I have just bought a house recently, and we were very fortunate to get a house at a good price. But the housing market is always moving in different directions, and it's just supply and demand seems to dictate it. And I know it's difficult for new homeowners to buy homes because of the deposit that's required. But houses are still selling and people are buying them, so it must be a buoyant market.
What are your thoughts about the costs involved in renting a house?
Rental costs seem to be quite high, and from a personal viewpoint, my wife and I were thinking of selling a house and renting a place, but the cost of the rent was going to be so much that it was going to be more than what we'd pay if we had a mortgage and paid interest. So we opted not to go renting, but to keep the mortgage and pay the interest, which was less than paying rent.
The focus on people living in cars in the media seems to have the journalists focusing on the bigger city centres like Auckland. So Mainland News went to investigate whether this problem is only contained to city areas or whether it's more widespread and being ignored. Chrissy Small caught up with the manager of the Motueka Service Centre, Lisa Lawrence, this week, who was one of the organisations at the coalface of supporting families in Motueka and surrounding areas.
Well, Motueka is a growing community. Of course, we've got lots of people moving into the area, a lot of refugees from Christchurch. Of course, that's been happening for a few years now. Tell me, how is the housing situation in this district?
It's fairly difficult to get into housing within Motueka, particularly if you don't have some reserve money behind you. So things like bond and 2 or 3 weeks advance rent, that's not realistic for people who are living on a benefit or on seasonal work. It's a real struggle.
Right, okay. And so, of course, we are a seasonal area, so there can't be a lot of jobs out there, just normal day-to-day 40-hour-a-week jobs.
That seems to be economically our weak link, is that it's not having stable work lives for our people so that they can get into the housing. They've got a good credit history that they can show their landlords, they can provide good references from landlords. So it's the accumulation of all these barriers of insecure work, insecure credit history. If they're on a benefit, they cannot automatically stump up with the bond and the advance rent. It might take them a week or so to get that in order, and then when we have new people coming in, like the refugees from Christchurch that you mentioned, and new immigrants, it's just simply an unbalanced market for our local people. They can't actually find the homes that they need here compared to somebody new coming in who has that buffer money coming in with them.
So really difficult, if you're really struggling, it's just a continual struggle, isn't it? There's no kind of hand out of that.
There's no there doesn't seem to be a lever within the government system that people can access within good time for finding a rental. So there's just no relief for them, and it becomes a cycle. So we've had families that unfortunately we're aware of are living in cars near the river. And we've notified, in terms of care of young people, little people, we've notified the appropriate authorities, and provided there was sanitation and running water, the authorities, child, youth and family authorities, were perfectly willing to allow that situation to continue, much to our complete disagreement that was a safe and reasonable way forward for a family. So we're dealing with real problems for our people, not just they can't scrape together a little bit of money and there's some relief coming up. There's no relief in the system there's no lever for them to pull to enable them just even get into a home.
Have you tried to talk to the local MPs about what's going on?
So I've got regular contact with Damien O'Connor, who's our Labour candidate for this area, and also with Maureen Pugh, who is the List MP I think she's based down the coast, but she comes up to Motueka regularly. And adequate access to housing is something that I raise with them often, and not just for our families that the Motueka Family Service Centre manage, so we work alongside families with children 0 to 16, but also for our men that are here working, no family support. They can't seem to find a flat that fits with their lifestyle, not able to find that social gathering that they can get into, that social grouping. I raise it with them. It's one of our prime things, economic stability and housing affordability here.
What is the average rent that you're seeing out there for people at the moment?
It's a good deal if you can get under $390 for a 3-bedroom home within Motueka, which is really the rate of that's the same as if a family is able to of a reasonably priced mortgage. That's not realistic on part-time work. It's not realistic on unstable work or sole parents, which most families are these days. If you're a superannuitant and you've come here with no reserves, it's just not viable.
So Lisa, how is work and income dealing with it? You must have some dealings with them. Housing accommodation allowances, are they keeping up with the cost of living and the cost of renting?
Definitely not, and they haven't for years. So the increments that the government increases the accommodation supplement by, minuscule compared to how the market keeps moving up and onwards, and there's just no way that a beneficiary or somebody on a low income can compete with someone who is on a much higher income or has come here with money. It's an unbalanced system. The WINS workers here one-on-one, absolutely lovely, and we can get some good traction. We do have a worker here who will sit in on meetings with the WINS workers to ensure that people are gaining everything they're entitled to. Mistakes still happen. People still get into bad moods. The WINS office in itself, the staff may be lovely, but the setup of the building is it's not designed to leave you there for you to leave there with your dignity and to leave there feeling valued and respected. So there's lots of barriers to people having a good experience there. If you're under pressure and you're flustered, as a person, you're not going to remember what to ask for. You're not going to remember to ask, am I getting everything I'm entitled to? So and with being a government department, I've noticed their strategies is to second people. So we may build a good relationship with, say, 3 or 4 key WINS workers, and 1 or 2 of them within a 12-month period may be seconded out of the district. We've lost a really key linkage, and they've lost some intellectual knowledge around what we do to support families. So it's a constant rebuilding of relationships. Really tricky.
But generally, you think that people have a favourable experience with WINS here?
I think that the WINS workers mean very well. I'm not entirely sure they get it right every time. Because we've got families that don't, not just families, but individuals who don't know how to speak their mind in a way that works and understand WINS jargon. I mean, they've changed the names of every single benefit. I still don't know what they're called. So how can people reasonably navigate that system? It's not realistic. So I think people go in there under pressure, uninformed about what their rights are and what they can reasonably expect, and they're not. The power imbalance is too huge. And if you have a WINS worker on a bad day or who is new to the job and doesn't let you know everything you're entitled to, you'll walk out of there and it's just the most degrading, humiliating experience.
Yeah.
The Housing Accord Nelson City Council signed with the government in June 2015 set a target of consenting 720 new dwellings over the next 3 years. On council website explaining special housing areas and their housing accord, the byline under the heading is Addressing the Cost of Housing in Nelson. On Thursday morning this week, on the agenda for full council meeting, will be special housing areas with 4 recommendations. One recommendation to council is to receive the special housing report and approve number 1 and 5 Tahunanui Drive, Car Company on the traffic light corner of Tahunanui, and 19 and 21 Beach Road, Aloha Lodge address as potential special housing areas. Included in the recommendations is an amendment to the qualifying development criteria on the iwi-owned Ocean Lodge site, instead of 4 stories to allow a 5-storey development. Another area which has been causing concern for local residents is a prime central city site, currently planned to be sold by council to a developer for a 4-storey housing development on Brett's car park by Cathedral Hill in Niles Street. If approved, these recommendations are approved, then Mayor Rachel Reese will be required to notify the Minister of Building and Housing for these recommendations to be considered as special housing areas under the Housing Accord and Special Housing Areas Act 2013. This begs the question if these recommendations, essentially apartment blocks by the sea, will address the cost of affordable housing in Nelson. The Nelson City Council signed a housing accord with the government in June 2015. What is your thoughts around the housing accord?
I really feel that any housing needs in New Zealand should stay with one group, Housing Corp, whatever they're calling themselves this week, because that cuts down on all these little charities who are paying people's salaries, which is money coming out of actually being spent on houses. Housing Corporation used to be a great organisation, which was really worked. I think maybe they've got a bit downhearted, just like WINS.
Tomorrow in the City Council's agenda they'll be putting recommendations through around the housing accord, and one is to build some apartment blocks in Tahuna. Do you think this is addressing the affordability of housing for Nelsonians?
Is that going to be where the Wakatu site is? That won't be affordable because it's Wakatu owned.
There's 3 different sites. One will be on the car company on the corner of the lights. One will be on Beach Road where another motel is, I think Aloha. And they'll be building apartment blocks. So not all of them are Wakatu. Some of them are private developers.
2 aren't, yes. I don't know. Is it possible? Nelson's building costs are a lot higher than other parts of New Zealand. Is it possible to have low-cost accommodation? If it was Housing Corp, I'd say yes, it would be possible.
After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.
Are you looking for a scooter, walker, wheelchair, baby seats or pushchairs? Then come in and see the Nelson Region Specialist at Mobility for You, 269 Queen Street, Richmond, opposite the library. We have a huge selection of scooters, walkers, wheelchairs and accessories, along with a free booklet guide. We also provide a breakdown service if you ever get a puncture or a flat battery. We have fully equipped service vans to rescue you. Hi, I'm Robin Jordan and I invite you to call in and see the friendly team at Mobility for You, 269 Queen Street, Richmond, opposite the library.
Hi there, Julian Toon, Waimea Telecommunications. We install and maintain domestic and commercial satellite TV, UHF Freeview and Mainland TV installations in the Nelson, Tasman regions. We specialise in Panasonic telephone systems and provide communications, Wi-Fi, IT and wiring for internet, fibre, computers and DSL systems. At Waimea Telecommunications, we also provide specialist electronic systems for features such as a security camera you can watch on your TV, visitor alert systems and much more. Improve your security and communication and entertainment today. Call us on Waimea Telecommunications on 021 472297, ytel.co.nz.
Why would you want to pay as much as $1,000 for a single bed mattress when you can buy a high quality locally made mattress like this for as little as $220? And a queen size mattress could cost you in excess of $3,000, but at Nelson Beds you could have a mattress like this as low as $425. So why would you go out and spend a fortune on your child's bedroom when you can come to Nelson Beds and buy a complete single mattress and base set, a 7-drawer Scotch chest, a headboard and a 3-drawer bedside cabinet for as little as $979? So call and discuss our custom manufacturing options and local after sales service at Nelson Beds, Nelson's only bedding manufacturer.
Sit and Be Fit is on at the Victory Community Centre Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. at the Victory Community Church, 238 Upper Vanguard Street. School terms only. Fun while you get fitter, work at your level. For more information, please contact Shirley on 547 1433 or 021 121 8023.
Victory 60 Plus is on Tuesdays at 1:30 through to 3:30 p.m. at 238 Upper Vanguard Street. You can join in for cards, games and a cuppa. For more information you can contact Jan on 546 9057 or 027 4577 955.
On behalf of the team here at Mainland Television News, thank you for joining us, and we'll bring you the latest news and events from around the region again tomorrow.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.
Nelson Tire Centre. Great prices, great service. Buy your own Bryford trailer, all types, all sizes. See Colin Douglas for your tires and batteries.